What did we learn during our study of Numbers? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we conclude our study of the book of Numbers on Walking Through the Bible. We have now come to the 132nd and final episode in our study of Numbers. If you have missed any episodes or would like to rewatch this series, you can find them all at www.eastendchurch.org by searching under the Media pull-down menu for the WTTB English podcast link. So having now completed our verse-by-verse study of Numbers, it is a good time to reflect upon what we have learned. The book of Numbers is a mixture of narrative and law from the time Israel left Sinai until when they were situated just across from Jericho in the plains of Moab, awaiting the command of God to go in and take Canaan. The book itself begins with Israel still at Mount Sinai, having completed the tabernacle. A census of Israel is taken that will count all men who are 20 years old and above, men able to go to war. Excluded from this census were the Levites, because they were going to work in the tabernacle and thus not go to war, and women and children. In total, Israel's first census found 603,550 men of war present in Israel. We noted that some scholars disbelieve this high number because they cannot find archaeological evidence that a people of that size roamed the wilderness near Israel during this time period. To that we say two things. First of all, we have been adamant in saying that the wilderness that Israel wandered in is not where most scholars believe it is, with it being on the east side of the Jordan River and not the west side. So it is possible they're looking in the wrong place. And then second, an argument from silence does not prove something to be wrong. I cannot say that because I haven't found the evidence, that such evidence doesn't exist, and therefore the story in Numbers is wrong. All I can say is that the evidence hasn't been found yet, and continue looking. Only when there is proof to show that the census in Numbers had to be wrong, could we assert that Moses got it wrong here. And that proof simply hasn't materialized. A census was also taken of the Levites for the service in the tabernacle, males from 1 month old and above, after which we found that the Levites numbered 22,300. After these censuses were completed, the second Passover observed, and the duties of each family of the Levites given out, Israel was told to leave Sinai and move towards Canaan. Along the way they complained for food, and God sent them quail, though he punished them for eating it. Miriam also quarreled against Moses and was punished with leprosy. When they finally reached Kadesh, Israel sent out 12 spies, one from each tribe, to go into Canaan and spy it out. When the spies returned, they told Israel that indeed the land was as good as God described, a land flowing with milk and honey. However, 10 of the 12 spies told Israel that the people were too mighty and the cities too fortified for Israel to take. Only Joshua and Caleb said that Israel could take the land with God's help. Israel decided to listen to the 10 spies who gave the bad report and were then plotting to return to Egypt. As a result of this rebellion, God punished Israel with 40 years of wandering in the wilderness until those 20 years of age and older, the ones who could be held accountable for the rebellion, had died out. Only Joshua and Caleb would be able to enter the promised land from that generation. Over the years of wilderness wandering, we only read of a few notable events that happened. We had the rebellion of Korah against the leadership of Moses and Aaron. Korah and his band of rebels were swallowed up by the earth. We also had God confirming the leadership of Aaron and his family as priests when God made Aaron's rod blossom. But other than that, we don't have much narrative from this period of Israel's history, most likely because it is a history that wasn't that memorable. Near the end of the period of wandering, Miriam, Moses and Aaron's sister, died at Kadesh and was buried there. While at Kadesh, Moses and Aaron didn't hallow God before the people when the people complained for water, and for that, Moses and Aaron wouldn't get to enter the promised land. Aaron would die at Mount Hor, and Eleazar, his son, would take his place as high priest. Moses will die at the end of Deuteronomy, with Joshua taking his place of leadership, but not lawgiver. The remainder of Numbers from chapter 21 on had Israel's journey from the wilderness to the plains of Moab across from Jericho. They were refused passage through Edom and Moab, so they had to travel around those countries. While on this journey, Israel again murmured against God, resulting in God sending poisonous serpents to bite them. In order to save those who were bitten from death, God had Moses make a brazen serpent, and whoever looked upon the brazen serpent would live. Jesus will refer to this story and relate it to himself in John 3. After crossing the Arnon River, north of Moab, Israel defeated the Amorites and took possession of that land east of the Jordan, including the plains of Moab. Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh would receive this land instead of land on the west side of the Jordan, so long as they helped their brethren conquer Canaan. While on the plains of Moab, Balak, king of Moab, hired Balaam, a prophet, to curse Israel so that Moab could defeat Israel. However, God didn't allow Balaam to curse Israel, and instead Balaam blessed Israel, much to the dismay of Balak. And so the book of Numbers ends with Israel in the plains of Moab, which is where we will see them, Lord willing, when we study Deuteronomy. Through it all, we learn that the success or failure of Israel depended solely upon whether or not the people would faithfully obey God in all that he commanded them. When they followed God, God was with them, and they were victorious. However, when they rebelled, God wasn't with them, and they were defeated. God didn't accept Israel in sin and punish them for their sins. We also learned about the faithfulness of God in providing for his people. They still received manna from heaven, even during the wilderness wandering years. Though he certainly could have, God also didn't totally annihilate his people during this time. He would keep his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For us, then, we need to learn to depend on God for our needs too, for he is faithful to provide for them. With that, then, we conclude our study of the book of Numbers. The Lord willing, in the next lesson, we will be returning to the New Testament and begin our study of the book of John with an introduction to that book. We hope you'll join us for that discussion as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.